Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a couple of weeks. We haven't done one of these in a little bit of time now, and that's okay. It's the off season. Things are slowing down,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still plenty to talk about. There's
Yeah,
still plenty to talk about. Much
definitely.
to discuss. We have much to discuss.
Yes, and I mean, let's just say it. Happy 17th anniversary of the Ducks winning Stanley Cup. Oh wait, no, sorry, 14th anniversary. Did you not see this on Twitter today?
No, I didn't.
The
What
Ducks
did I miss?
accidentally tweeted out that it was the 17th anniversary of the Ducks winning the Cup when it's actually the 14th anniversary.
Okay.
So yeah,
Interesting.
So,
Is that like a cell phone?
I think it was just someone didn't do the math right. I don't know. Very odd. Very odd. But regardless, 14 years ago today, the Ducks won the Stanley Cup, and I remember them winning that. Very good day. June 6th is a day that Ducks fans should all remember. June 6th, 2007.
Where were you when the Ducks won the Stanley Cup?
I was a sophomore in high school and was watching at my parents' house with my dad, and I can remember for whatever reason, I think it was a weekend, so the game was a little bit earlier. It wasn't like a 7 p.m. start local time, so it was at home, and so I think it was like a 3 or 4 p.m. start, maybe even earlier. And yeah, so I can remember the being at my parents' house watching it and just kind of enjoying all of it. It was a very, very cool day.
Nice. I have never experienced my team winning a Stanley Cup, so I envy that. I envy that experience. But Jake, it is the playoffs. The National Hockey League playoffs are going on, and tensions are running high. Tensions are running high. Being a Canadians fan, have had to deal
Yeah, how do
with
you
a
feel?
lot of
How do you feel?
I've had to deal with a lot of hate from people like you, and that's okay because
Me?
they're still winning games.
Me?
Yeah, having to deal with the skeptics, saying that the Canadians are only winning because of injuries. It's frustrating.
I mean, they did only win the first round because of Tavares getting hurt.
No, that's a bad take. It's okay. Bad faith argument.
Here's the thing. The Canadians are a good team. I have never said otherwise. I have been someone who's actually championed them for you, especially last year. And they should sweep the Jets.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you and I texted before the series started saying, will the Habs sweep the Jets? And you were not bullish on that. And I was like, I think they will. But you backed off.
Well, I thought that the Jets would have a little more in them. And then it just, after game one, and especially with Scheifele getting suspended, it was like, well, and then if after game two, that ended 1-0 and the Jets did almost nothing offensively, it was like, well, this might not last very long.
Yeah.
So there's your Habs talk. I'm sure everybody was dying for that.
Yeah.
But it's been a fun postseason. We did a watch along yesterday for our patrons.
Yes.
We did Carolina, Tampa Bay. It got heated. Jake is the resident Hurricanes fan here, and I do enjoy watching the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Let's just say
very entertaining second period.
Let's just say that Felix started using nicknames for players on the Tampa Bay Lightning.
No, that's not true.
That's not true. Chris, just call him out, please. Clip it. Find the clip.
No.
There's actually been a decent amount of things in Ducksland over the last 2 weeks because we didn't do a show last weekend. And so this week was the draft lottery, the big day for the Ducks, where they came in with the second best odds in the draft lottery to essentially win either the first or second overall pick. They had the second best odds to do that. And do you want to just jump in and let the folks know what happened?
Well, first off, I just want to point out, was you bringing up the anniversary of the Ducks Stanley Cup win a way to steal my bit?
No,
was that stealing my thunder?
It was not, but sure. Yeah. I'm stealing your sunshine.
It's okay. I'll let you have this moment.
Yes.
Draft lottery though. So once again, the Ducks drop back, except this time they only drop back one spot. So the Ducks had the second best odds in the draft lottery, and instead of picking second, they will be picking third.
Yeah.
Now, Jake, you and I have had a lot of discussions about this draft, and it's only going to heat up as the draft approaches. There was a lot of reaction on Twitter when this went down, and even among media of, here we go again. The Ducks.
It's a disappointment.
This is a disappointment. This is a problem. And I'm of the opinion that I think with this draft, sliding just a little bit is not the end of the world for the Ducks because of how wide open it is.
Well, it's not necessarily even. So that's one aspect of it. Yes, you're correct. I think just no matter what the benefit of finishing second last was at worst you're going to fall to fourth. And you're still going to get a good player at fourth no matter what. And so falling only to third is also a good thing because you're still getting the third overall pick. And the fact that there's no clear-cut first overall, there's no clear-cut even second overall. There's a whole lot of things that can end up happening. And the other thing that I just kind of want to bring up here is that with all that talk of disappointment and all this different type of stuff, and it's, people are saying, of course, the Ducks are the only team that got jumped. And some people saying, of course, the NHL is screwing the Ducks. Of course, the NHL wants Seattle. The Ducks are the only team to fall a spot in this entire
conspiracy
in this entire draft. This is how percentages in a lottery work. I mean, here's the percentage chance of the Ducks finishing in different spots. First overall was 12%. Second overall, 11.7%. Third overall, 26.9%. Fourth overall, 49.3%. So the Ducks actually had the highest percentage chance of falling 2 spots to fourth overall at 49.3%. So this wasn't even the most likely thing to occur. And so the fact that they only fell to third, I view that as a very good thing because it's better than falling to fourth. Like, I think it's just understanding the percentages, understanding what's going to happen, understanding how the lottery works. I mean, my personal opinion is get rid of the lottery. Just let the worst team have the first overall pick, second worst team, second overall pick. Like, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do here with the draft system is redistribute talent. So just do it that way. But if you're going to have a lottery, at least understand what it's doing. So kind of having said that, falling to third, if you look at a lot of mock drafts have Owen Power going first overall, Matt Beniers going second overall. And then third overall, it kind of is fair game, open game, depending on where you look. A lot of people are picking Dylan Guenther to the Ducks, who...
a lot of people? Who's a lot of people?
Eric Stevens had him going to them. I believe it was Craig, I think it was Craig Button, had Dylan Guenther going to the Ducks. Sam Constantino, on the other hand, along with Cam Robinson. Constantino at Sportsnet, Cam Robinson at EP Rinkside had the Ducks taking Simone Edvinsson.
So let's discuss this a little. Let's slow this down a little bit.
Yep.
So Ducks are picking third.
Yep.
Before we go into all the different variables, let's just kind of work our way down and get to third and can kind of show why this is, because, immediately once the pick was announced, I think a lot of people immediately were saying, well, who are they going to take? Who should they take? Who's going to be available? And the thing with this draft is, do we even know that Owen Power will go number one? Is that even set in stone?
No, we don't actually. I think it's pretty likely, but it's not set in stone.
No, not at all. And that's why with this draft, it's not like a year, like even last year, let's say, we're dropping back, or 2 years ago, or whenever, dropping back is this big negative. And so I think that looking at it, though, if we want to just work our way down at first overall, let's just say the consensus pick is Owen Power, and he does indeed end up going to Buffalo. Is there any other name that you could see? I know Cam Robinson at Elite Prospects had Matty Beniers going there. Do you see any other possibilities, or do you think it's Power?
I'm pretty confident that it would probably be Owen Power. I'm trying to right now look up the Buffalo Sabres depth chart just to see who they have on the left side of defense. And this is going to be a weird draft where, because there's no consensus, I think, while yes, you should never draft for need necessarily, and I think Bob Murray, when we eventually get to his quotes, kind of agrees with that thought process. This is a draft when you have a lot of guys in a similar range with a similar kind of projection. If you were to give them a projection grade, you probably would end up favoring the player that fits your need more so than the player that doesn't. And so Rasmus Dahlin is a left-handed shot defenseman. And so maybe they look at Owen Power and say, we don't actually need the left-handed shot D-man. And maybe they view it as, oh crap, we need actually more so a center to come in. We have Dylan Cousins, but we want someone
especially if
they move Jack Eichel. Yeah,
and
so this gives them, and so I think that there's a real chance that they go Matty Beniers at first overall, with the fact of them having Dylan Cousins there. That gives you Matty Beniers and Dylan Cousins as a 1-2 punch if you move Jack Eichel for whatever you get back. Do
you think it's so clear cut that Beniers is the best forward in this draft?
No, I don't. And that's the other thing. I mean, there's potential that they go Eklund. The one thing that I think on Buffalo,
I don't think Eklund goes first, but I'm just curious.
Maybe they go Edvinsson.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of this conversation, maybe let's just call it Power.
I'm pretty confident it's power, even though they do have Darlene there already. I think that you can have a 1-2 punch. You can have guys on the first pair and guy on the second pair for a long time to come, and maybe you end up playing one on
And
the
given
offside.
how much of a tire fire they were this year, maybe bring in another defenseman to kind of
Well,
stabilize things.
and I also think that the Buffalo Sabres, I think it's pretty well known at this point in time that their scouting staff is very, very small. That's something that's been well
Yeah.
publicized at this point in time. And so with kind of that being said, I would highly doubt that they would be the team to buck the trend and go against kind of where central scouting is
Well,
and where,
remember their first round pick last year,
Jack
where they
Quinn.
picked Jack Quinn.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. looking at points solely. And so looking at the guys that, so, I mean, maybe they end up looking at Kent Johnson in that same aspect, because that would be Kent Johnson, I think, is the best comparison to Jack Quinn, and Marco Rossi and Matty Beniers. And so I think for this argument, and I think that it's a pretty safe assumption that they go with Owen Power, though.
let's call it Owen Power.
Yes.
Now, like you were just saying, after the first overall pick, I think it's completely wide open.
Yeah.
The thing is that the team that has the second overall pick, which, a lot of people will say should have been the Ducks pick, a lot of Ducks fans will say that, is the Seattle Kraken, who are a brand new team. So it's much harder to speculate or try to guess who their pick will be, because there are no needs to be met.
We haven't seen previous drafts to understand
Exactly.
what they favor.
Exactly. There's no track record. So knowing all of that, knowing what little we know about the organization, what are some of your, I guess, what are your best projections of what they could do?
So I was listening to Chris Peters' podcast. I think it was like Hockey Sense or something along those lines, and he got into a lot of good questions. I haven't actually finished the podcast
including
yet.
one of yours.
Including one of mine. I asked the question partially with an
Jake
eye.
does his homework, folks.
Partially with an eye towards the Ducks pick, but wondering if Seattle would look at taking Wallstedt. Because for those that don't know, Jesper Wallstedt is the highest projected goalie. He's up there with like last year's Yaroslav Askarov, potentially even better than that. A lot of people are very, very high on him. And so Chris Peters, who for those that don't know, used to work at ESPN, really well-known prospect guy. Basically, it said that Ron Francis had mentioned with Seattle that he views his team as needing to build down the middle of the ice. So goaltender, defense, center. And so that's how he wants his team to be built. So with that being said, there is the potential for Wallstedt, but Chris even mentioned this, that it's very unlikely for them to go with a goalie at that high. And I think that that's the right call. I think there's a slight possibility, if they're that high on him, that you take him and view him as the goaltender of the future. But I highly doubt that that's the route that they take, when you can especially get a goalie later that could potentially become that. So having said that, they will probably look at a defense or a center. So with that being said, there's a bunch of defense, and there is one good center in this draft. And so I think if Owen Power's gone, I think it's going to come down to, what do they view as a more important type of player? Do they want Matt Beniers? Do they want Brant Clark, who I know you and I probably have the top four of a similar ilk of being Clark, Beniers, and Eklund? Or do they want an Edmondson? Do they look at Luke Hughes and say, due to his draft age, he may be a higher type of talent? So I think most likely they do go for a Matty Beniers. I think that seems like the most likely scenario.
Safe pick.
It's the safe pick. It's one that I think Ron Francis was a center in the league, he may view that as a necessity.
Also look at how the Hurricanes were built.
Yes.
I think that there is a little bit of maybe that's what you're looking to figure out how Seattle will go.
Correct. But I think Matty Beniers is the most likely option there. Having said that, I don't think it's significantly so. I think that it's maybe 60%, 55% chance they go Beniers. I think there is a really high likelihood of them kind of going a little bit off the board, just because we don't know. We don't know what their scouting staff is. Maybe they view Simone Edvinsson as being this guy that is this raw, untapped talent. And out of all franchises in this draft, at the high end of it, they're the ones that have the most leeway with their fan base. They have the time to be able to really go take their time with a more so of a project type player. There we go. A project type player, and take their time with him and develop him into this kind of monster type player that some people think Edvinsson could become if given the time and proper development. And so maybe they look at that. Maybe like I said, Luke Hughes. And so I think that I'd say it's most likely over 50% chance they go with Beniers, with the other kind of percentage left being one of those kind of three defensemen of Clark, Edvinsson, or Hughes.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I've noticed is there is some criticism of Beniers, mainly from just like the same person in our mentions over and
So
over
one person.
again on Twitter. But I think it is fair to ask if he, I think he's a very good forward prospect, but might not have the high end ceiling that you would love to have at that slot.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that narrative kind of, while yes, there is something there, he still put up points.
And and if you watch him play, he's a fantastic skater.
Like I think what that says is that misses that he really put up points in NCAA hockey this year, which first off, it's not normal for a draft eligible player to be playing in the NCAA. Granted, part of that is due to Matt Beniers being a bit older, and so that's one part of it that is not necessarily normal for these types of guys. And I'm trying to pull up actually his stats, and for whatever reason, Elite Prospects didn't want to work for me right now. But I believe he was just under a point per game this past year. Yes, 24, or no, he was exactly at a point per game, 24 points in 24 games at the University of Michigan. And so that is very, very good for a draft eligible player. Just as I think it's important to just have some comparables, I think. And so when you look at, for instance, Trevor Zegras when he was in the NCAA, Trevor Zegras in his freshman year, which he would have been just slightly older. He would have been, so Zegras is a March birthday, and I believe Beniers is an October birthday. But let me get back to that. Trevor Zegras, I believe, was just under, and here we go. Trevor Zegras had 36 points in 33 games. So Beniers was at 24 and 24, Zegras at 36 and 33. And Beniers was younger than Zegras was when he put up those points. Mm-hmm. And so I think that kind of when you look at it in that perspective, I think that kind of knocks off the idea of him not having this offensive ceiling when he's putting up those points. Maybe he doesn't have necessarily the high skill ceiling where visually he creates these high risk plays like we see with the Trevor Zegras that are very fun to watch and do create goals, but he's damn effective in his transition game, and those transition plays lead to goals and assists.
Right. No, I agree with that. I just wanted to hear your take on that, and I'm sure
by the way,
are curious.
Kent Johnson, 27 and 26 games. I do have some slight concerns there, though, mainly because of being on line with Beniers, and some people have had concerns. I still think Kent Johnson, though, is a clear top 10 overall pick, or top 10 pick in this draft.
So, okay. So we're going with Power and Beniers as the 1-2.
Yes.
Maybe you could even flip that and say maybe Beniers goes 1, Power goes 2.
There is a chance, maybe it's like a 10 to 20% chance over based upon if Beniers goes first or second. But I think there's a 10 to 20% chance that Beniers falls to third. Because having said all this and really talk glowingly about Matty Beniers, for whatever reason, NHL Central Scouting has him as the 6th best North American skater.
Yeah, and that leaves a lot of wiggle room here because that's considering all the European guys as well when teams are looking at these boards.
Exactly. And the thing is, Central Scouting, there are some issues with it, but that probably is similar to some team scouts. So maybe Buffalo doesn't view Beniers as that high. Maybe same thing with Seattle.
Well, for the purposes of the Ducks, all that matters is the two teams' boards ahead of them.
Yes, exactly.
And it will be interesting. I would be willing to bet that Power will go first because of what you explained with Buffalo scouting staff. Maybe I'll be dead wrong about that. And that's the fun of this is kind of guessing. That's kind of what's fun about this year's draft is it feels like a mystery that we're trying to unravel and uncover. So that leads us to third. So assuming, again, this is all assuming this is completely a mock draft, that Power and Beniers are off the board.
FYI, Sam Constantino, who I have some issues with, but he's done a good job with having inside sources.
Jake just starting beefs with media members
definitely.
On our podcast.
No, but he has good sources. I just wish there was more information in his mock draft on players. But he has good information within organizations. He has Brant Clark going to Seattle at 2. So that that is something that's there. And same, and so it's not this locked in thing with Beniers going 2, but I think for our sake right now, I think if you and I would both agree, just kind of taking this off the board, if Beniers is available at 3, that's who the Ducks should take. Full stop.
Well, okay, but let's make this a little harder. Let's just say Power and Beniers are off
I
the
know.
board.
I'm just saying that
Oh yeah.
if Beniers is there, you and I both agree. Just in case that does happen, you and I agree that's who they should take.
Yeah, so I think that's important to talk about. So if Beniers is available, the reason why I would favor the Ducks taking him is for everything you just said about him, is that he is the kind of player that I think that their roster could really use. And especially when you consider that you could have a 1-2 punch of Zegras and Beniers, two guys who lit up college hockey, two guys with similar skill sets in the sense that they can push play forward, that they can create for their line mates, that they could drive a line on their own. That could be really potent for a few years to come. And
Yeah.
so that's why I would favor that pick, because
Well,
I don't know if there's another forward like Beniers who has that ability.
I mean,
And that's what will be
but it's
interesting.
funny just to give a brief comparison. I think Beniers is what everyone thinks Lundestrom is. Right?
What?
No, hear me out here.
Where are you getting this?
No, as in what people when Lundestrom was picked thought he would be the this solid two-way center that could put up points and be good offensively additionally. That is like Matty Beniers is that player, and what some people even after the hat trick were saying Isaac Lundestrom would become, and you and I tried to throw the brakes on that a bit. That is closer. Matty Beniers is closer to that than obviously Isaac Lundestrom will become. But that's kind of the mold of the player that you're getting there. You're getting this high-end two-way player who has a high motor, can really put up points. He's kind of in the Jonathan Taves mold, the Ryan Kessler mold, that type of player. Maybe not as hard physically as
No.
Ryan Kessler. That's not necessarily his game, but he can get in on the forecheck and has a high motor for that.
Well, I think the big thing with Beniers is that he's such a good transition player.
Yes.
He's such a good skater in open ice.
Yep.
He's so good on his edges, and that's something that's so key in the modern game.
Yep.
You watch these Vegas Colorado matchups, and what's driving the bus for these teams is their ability to get out on the rush.
Yeah. Would a better comparison maybe be if we're trying to make the comparison to a
Well, the problem is Lindstrom is just a totally different tier of prospect.
Yeah. So pivoting away from that slightly. Pivoting away from that.
Have I talked you down from that?
No,
take?
because I stand by it just from what I've heard from some people thinking of Lundestrom. But
Okay. Maybe Bob Murray. Is that one of the people?
More so, yes. But looking at like Colorado, would you say he's kind of in the mold of a Nazem Kadri? Not as physical, but in a similar mold.
Yeah, I think just an effective kind of play driving center.
Yep.
But I think he's got a lot more skill than that.
Yes. Agreed.
Although Kadri was a top 10 pick,
he
top
was
15 pick.
He was.
Yeah. So Kadri was a highly rated prospect. But yeah, I think with Beniers, I don't know where he would slot. Like let's say in last year's draft class, like if you were to put him among that group of forwards, I don't know where he would go.
I think he's top 10. I think
he'd go ahead of Jack Quinn for me.
He would go. He would definitely go ahead of Jack Quinn. I think honestly, he potentially would still go ahead of Marco Rossi. You and I disagree with that he should. Yeah. But I think he would.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, he's a high-end forward prospect, and I think again, like that's what the Ducks need. They need to bolster that transition game.
Yeah.
They need to bolster their kind of high-end outcomes.
Yep.
Right. They need to have guys who can increase their probability. So anyway.
So back to your point where if I just wanted to touch on that because it's key. If Beniers is there, we should briefly mention that. But assuming Beniers is taken.
Assuming Beniers is gone and Power is gone number one.
Yeah. Because I think Power's no matter what going 1 or 2.
So I'll just give you who other people have said that they should take. So you've already brought this up, but Eric Stevens had the Ducks taking Dylan Guenther 3rd overall. And Guenther is a weird case because he only played, I believe, 12 games in the WHL this year, put up 24 points. And it's really hard to get a good read on him because, for example, Hockey Prospecting, the model that we love with Byron Bader, who's been on our show, has him rated very highly, but the sample is so small there. What do you do with that? And then Cam Robinson at EP Ringside in his mock draft had the Ducks taking Simone Edvinsson at 3rd overall, who is kind of a boomer bust pick to me as a defenseman who's got potentially a really high upside and could also, there's people who say there's some issues in his game, his kind of hockey sense, different things like that. Will the skills translate? Will they develop? And so as you can see, there's a pretty broad spectrum there of possible picks. So where do you land? I think I know where you land, but let's just hear your pick.
So I think Dylan Guenther's a very interesting one. I wanted to bring this up. I want to give some people some numbers here because I think It's important to try to have some comparables with numbers and try to give people something with that. And so the thing with Dylan Guenther that's interesting here is in the 12 games he played, he put up 24 points, which is insane. Putting up 2 points per game over the course of a season has not been done in the last 20 years by a draft-eligible player out of the WHL. Sam Reinhart outside of Guenther has the most at 1.75 over 60 games. Nick Patan at 1.69, Seth Jarvis 1.69, Leon Draisaitl at 1.64 over 64 games. The key difference there, though, is all those players played 60-plus games, whereas Guenther had a solid 12-game stretch. So it's very concerning to base a lot off that 12-game stretch because all of those guys could have had these insane 12-game stretches in those 60-game periods where they were over 2 points per game or at 2 points per game and then maybe fell off a bit. And I kind of decided to watch some clips on Guenther this past week and look at some of his goals because you can really kind of find some YouTube videos that basically show all of his goals when you only have 12 games. And a lot of them are kind of in transition, which obviously is something that's good in the NHL, but they're a lot of just finding the backdoor pass or being fed the backdoor pass, those types of plays. And you and I were discussing this a little bit on our watch along yesterday, but what was it? Daryl Belfry had a quote where he's like, is that a junior goal or an NHL goal? Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned that potentially some of those points could be junior goals. And granted, you still have to do well to accumulate those, but it's still a smaller sample size, and over the long course of a season, maybe those start to go away. And so that is, I guess, my slight concern when looking at Guenther, is looking at some of those goals that were scored and how they were scored and seeing if that would be something that would necessarily be repeatable in the NHL. And so that is kind of where I'm concerned on that. As for Simone Edvinsson, I'm just concerned on that pick also, mainly because he seems like a clone of Owen Power in the sense of big, tall left-hand shot defenseman, and could be who a lot of teams have identified as the player they want to take if Owen Power has already been taken in the draft. And kind of watching some clips, he's an interesting player. He's very tall, very lanky, pretty good
skater,
very good skater, good in transition. But yeah, I can get lost a little bit, and I just have some slight concerns because anytime I hear that a guy is a project defenseman, that's not necessarily something you want at a number 3 overall, because that means there is some risk there. It is a higher risk play. Maybe the payoff's there. Maybe that's the reason you do it.
Also with Edvinsson, like, is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Yes.
Is taking a swing on a defenseman what you want to do?
Well, especially at 3rd overall.
Exactly, because if he hits, will it have been the wait? Will it have been worth the risk? Whereas with the forward, the payoff there is potentially just higher inherently.
Yes, exactly. And so getting to the player that I actually like for 3rd overall, assuming everything's played out the way it is, who knows if the Ducks would actually go this way, but the player that I like overall is William Eklund. And the reason for that is you look at some of the numbers over in the SHL for draft-eligible players, and this is what I like to look at, is looking at their draft-eligible season and kind of seeing how things played out. William Eklund on a points-per-game level, first off, the SHL played 40 games, William Eklund played over 40 games this season. So this is pretty close to a normal season, honestly, for a lot of for the SHL. I think they did play a full season. But over the last 20 years, he has the 2nd most points per game for a draft-eligible player out of the SHL. The only person that was higher was Elias Lindholm at 0.63. William Eklund is at 0.58. Nicholas Backstrom at 0.57 is below William Eklund. Other players kind of below him, Alexander Holtz, Mika Zibanejad, and he even this season outproduced Alexander Holtz, who was on his own team, outproduced Lucas Raymond, who was taken, what was Raymond taken? 4th overall last year? Mm-hmm. And so the only, I guess, concern, if you want to bring this up, because I think it's important to bring up all the different...
5'8".
Well, it's that, but also he's older. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to compare him to Lucas Raymond, who was young for last year's draft, William Eklund is an October birthday, October 12th. So he is an older birthday for this draft. And so that might be a reason why you're slightly concerned on that. He's turning 19 in October.
Yeah.
So that might be a slight reason for concern there. But to get into what Eklund brings, Eklund is a winger. He can maybe play center. There's some people out there that think maybe you try him down the middle just to see what you can do with him. But William Eklund, he's a guy that's kind of the bit of a playmaker from the wing. He also has a shot on him and really kind of does it all. And he's also good in his own zone, good defensively, good on the puck. And if you watch some clips of him, you'll see when the puck's on his stick, fun things happen, good things happen. And there was one goal that really stuck out to me. And now, granted, one goal, so could just be an outlier here and want to completely say that. But when we were talking about junior goals versus NHL goals, there was one goal he scored where he basically shot the puck on net, followed his shot, though, got around the defender who was in front of him, shot around the face-off dots, followed it, got to his rebound, and put it in the back of the net. So created his own shot and got around the defenseman to get to his rebound and then potted the rebound. And those are the types of goals that I think if you want to look at, that is an NHL caliber goal because you're following your shot. You're getting to your rebound. For anyone that wants to say as a smaller guy, he may have trouble getting to dirty areas. He has no issues doing that if you watch some of his plays. And then he also had some plays like you remember Trevor Zegras' goal in the World Juniors where he did the spinorama behind the goal to be able to feed it back the way that he was coming. And I forget who he fed it to, but put it in the back of the net. William Eklund had a very similar goal or similar assist as that, feeding the puck to Alexander Holtz this past season. And that's a really high IQ type of play to be able to pick out the guy and do a spinorama pass, kind of no-look pass right onto the guy's tape to put it in the net. And so I'm just really all on board with William Eklund. I think he has the skill level. He has the scoring. I think the only person I would take over him would be a Matty Beniers because of the transition talent that he has. But I think that if the only downside that you have to William Eklund is his size, then you shouldn't be considering that a downside at all.
So I have watched some William Eklund, and my only concern with him is that the SHL is such a different game. It's such a totally different.
It's more open.
It's more open. It's slower. There's more time to make decisions. There's a lot more control that you can have, and that's. Again, this is true for any player in that league. So it's not some crazy demerit. It's just, it just makes it harder to project how that will translate because he's not quite, I just didn't, maybe it's just the games I watched. He wasn't quite as electrifying. Now these were end of the season. So maybe there was some fatigue there, but what I liked about him.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say what I liked about him is that he does seem like a very intelligent player. He makes the right play, makes the simple play, and that's a skill that I think is projectable because he doesn't look like the kind of guy who will force the issue.
So there was something on Eklund that I can't really recall off the top of my head, but I think to start the season, he started out extremely, extremely hot, and I think he got injured or something, which may have caused a little bit of a downturn in his game.
I watched his last couple of games in the SHL from this season, which were about April, and I actually wasn't super blown away. But again, that's the problem with scouting is that it depends when you catch a guy, and then you have to kind of weigh that against the whole body of work. I think what's interesting is one name that we haven't talked about a ton is Mason McTavish, who is younger than William Eklund and who is a different style of player, but is a center, just kind of brings you a different profile altogether, more physical, more of a puck hound, more of like a playmaker type down the middle. Obviously, completely different origin there out of the CHL. So not a name that we've discussed as much, but another name that I wouldn't, if they made that pick, wouldn't think that's such a terrible pick either. So there's a wide range of outcomes there.
Yeah, and I think I'm curious to see how much, I guess supposedly that Bob Murray was at the under-18s, World Under-18s. He was there in person scouting that entire series. Entire tournament for the Ducks, and Mason McTavish had 11 points in 7 games in that tournament, and whereas Dylan Gunther had 7 points in 7 games, Brant Clark 7 points in 7 games. So I wonder, we sometimes overrate players due to World Juniors. I wonder if the Ducks are maybe going to have might do the same thing based upon a 7 games World Under-18s.
I mean, it's possible, but I don't think that McTavish would be this terrible pick either.
No, and I think that's the key thing to say here. Even though we're not as high on some of these players, I think that a lot of the key thing to focus on here is the Ducks are not going to get a bad player. They're going to, no matter what they do, even if it's not an outcome I necessarily like, I think no matter what
you just want Eklund.
I do. But whether it's
or
Eklund,
Beniers.
even if it's Edmondson, I don't love it, but I think they're still going to get a solid player. And I think that
Yes.
that's the key thing here is that
And I think that that's the lesson from last year is that the Ducks at sixth overall, I think that we both kind of had players that we thought that they should take, that they should target, and ultimately they went with Jamie Drysdale, and Jamie Drysdale is a very good prospect, deepens their prospect pool,
yep.
and will ultimately make the Ducks a better team. And unless it's some egregious gap where it's a guy who wasn't projected at that range at all, I think that it's defensible, and that's why I think that the thing to note for all these discussions leading up to the draft is that we are not full-time prospect people. We are not full-time draft people, but the information that we are transferring to the people who are listening to us is from people who are full-time, from people who do this for a living. And so our takes aren't out of nowhere. They're not just us kind of throwing stuff at the wall.
We haven't necessarily had the time to watch all of the film that we possibly can on these players just because there's not enough time really for us to do that. But there are people out there who have done that, and those are the people you and I listen to, you and I read to try to really get as much information as we can.
Yeah, so like if the Ducks picked, Brandt Clark, even Kent Johnson, if they pick any of these guys, I think in this range, it's not some cardinal sin.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, of course, you have your favorites, but I think that's an important thing to know.
Before we move on, let me ask this question, or before we actually jump into our ad read. Chris Kindred asked, just curious if you would trade third overall to the Jackets for 5th and 24th, or wherever the Leafs pick ends up.
So that's a question that's been thrown around. Not that one specifically. That's a good question. I think I would do that.
I would also.
Personally. I would 100% do that actually, just because if you think of the value.
Well, look at how many names we just mentioned at third overall.
Yeah, and to pick up an extra first, which the Ducks don't have right now. Mm-hmm. But there have been a lot of questions, and I think this is a good way to maybe close out this topic. Is do the Ducks end up making this pick, or will they trade it?
I think they do end up making this pick. I don't think they trade it. I don't think that Bob Murray wants to move out the highest pick he's ever had.
I agree with that, but there's chatter about the Ducks wanting to make a big swing this summer.
There is, and I would.
Third overall to Buffalo.
Would you do that
in a Jack Eichel trade? Given the strength of this draft class, I would think about it.
Yeah, I would also.
Because you're getting Jack Eichel.
Yeah. Jack Eichel's better than anyone you're going to get from this draft class. The issue is all about timing. And if the Ducks were 2 or 3 more years along in their rebuild, I think it lines up a lot better.
But Jack Eichel potentially accelerates the rebuild.
He does. I
mean, I guess just my whole thing is with this draft at third overall, and even if they had the first overall pick, I don't know if I'm holding on to that pick for dear
I would feel
life.
better if I could get a bottom 10 or bottom top 10 pick in if I was moving out.
Yes. Yeah, I think you want to maintain a first, but that will be difficult.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. It's not a make that move at all costs kind of pick. There has to be a walk-away point in any kind of Eichel discussion.
Yep. So, time for a word from our sponsor?
I would say so, yes.
All right. So, Father's Day is just around the corner, and you probably need a gift for a hairy dad. Make your dad proud this year and get him and yourself the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right. The Lawnmower 4.0, get 20% off and free shipping with the code CTP, like Crash the Pond, at manscaped.com. So, Felix, Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and just launched their Lawnmower 4.0. And Felix, imagine surprising your dad with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized body hair trimmer that says your balls will thank you on the box. What do you think your dad would say to that?
I think he'd probably think that that's hilarious.
He would.
Because it feels like that's something a dad would laugh at.
Definitely. I mean, do you want to tell people a little bit more about this 4th-generation trimmer?
So, Manscaped is kind enough to send us the latest Lawnmower 4.0, and I've got to say I've been using it. I've used it on all the regions necessary to make a full assessment, and I got to say it works really well. It's very lightweight. It's easy to charge. It's got the LED light. It's got all the things that were great about the 3.0, but it's even more lightweight. It's also easier to clean now. They give you little brushes that you can get all the gunk out after you're done using it. So I've been a huge fan of it.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned it, that light, they actually improved the light this time. because maybe you're in a place that's well lit already. You don't want to waste the battery. They have a way for you to actually turn off the light this time if you don't want to use it, which is a nice little addition. And so it even actually has, and this is really nice because I mean, what's worse than kind of going through the airport now that people are traveling again, and your trimmer accidentally goes off and you have a buzzing in your bag, and people are going to be looking at you weird. Security might take it out and be like, "What are you doing?" Well, this upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on and off switch that can engage a travel lock. So it won't do that. It's locked.
You won't go to jail at the airport for having your trimmer go off in the security line.
Exactly. And there's also a new wireless charging system. I'm all about that wireless charging life. I have a wireless charger on my phone.
It's awesome.
It's the best. And so they have that set up, electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. So yes, wireless charging ball trimmers are a thing now. And they also have amazing products like their cologne, Crop Mop ball wipes, Crop Reviver ball toner, and Crop Preserver ball deodorant. And for all the females listening, you'll appreciate this part. Manscaped products are cruelty-free, paraben-free, dye-free, and vegan. So you can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CTP at manscaped.com. You can get your dad a gift you know they will use. So that's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code CTP. Don't forget that you came from your dad's balls. This year, show your original home some love with Manscaped.
Love it. Love it. Go get him. Go get him. Also, my dad has ear hair, so I should get him the weed whacker.
Yeah, definitely get him the weed whacker.
A little preview for when I get up there. But yeah, so go check that out, everybody. Help support your favorite podcast. Now let's move on. This is an annual rite of passage, Jake. This is something that we've come to make a tradition here on the podcast on Crash the Pond, and it's the annual end of season Bob Murray press conference where he lets us into his mind for about 30 minutes and we get to hear what he has to say, what he thinks about the status of his team and where things are headed. So this year was no different. He gave his press conference, this time via Zoom, to the assembled media, and the first thing that was said that was important to note was that he's coming back, as is Dallas Eakins. So we have confirmation. Hey, there was still some lingering doubt about whether or not you were driving that train of maybe they weren't going to come back. Well, it is confirmed now. He will be back for one more season. So first off, just right off the bat, your reaction to that?
It's a mistake, but it's one that I think we both eventually saw coming.
No surprise.
No surprise. I think that the fact that it hadn't been announced within a week or pretty soon after the season ending meant that it was likely they were both coming back. And it seems as if a big reason, just in my personal opinion, no actual insight on this, but I would think that the Ducks don't want to have to buy guys out to not essentially fulfill their duties or pay guys to do nothing. They're doing that enough with Corey Perry. They probably don't want to do that in this aspect.
He's doing a whole lot.
He's doing a whole lot. And so I think that they don't necessarily want to do that as of right now. But I mean, maybe my read is wrong as we get into some of Bob Murray's
Maybe
quotes.
They actually believe in his plan.
Maybe Dallas Eakins more so is that than Bob Murray though. Who knows? Who knows?
Either way, it's maybe not the best thing.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, so that was kind of where it started. My first reaction was, this is kind of what I expected, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no surprise. And to be honest with you, even though I think that somebody should have paid the price for this season and really for the last 3 seasons, and I think one of them should have been the general manager, in a weird way, I think one more year of this, assuming that it's one more year, might not be the worst thing because the Ducks probably aren't going to be very good next season anyway.
No.
And especially now with Jeff Solomon in tow as an assistant general manager who potentially could be the heir apparent. Look, if Bob Murray and Dallas Eakins again next year showed no tangible progress with this group of players, maybe that strengthens the case for Solomon to be the next GM as soon as 2 seasons from now.
Yeah.
And so in a weird kind of roundabout way, maybe Eakins and Murray returning is not this kind of end of the world situation.
The only thing I do want to say on this, because I think that this is an important piece that I don't think has really been talked about enough. This is the perfect offseason. I don't think you're going to have another offseason where you have so many good coaches available. And I think that there is a big missed opportunity with that. And so obviously with Bob Murray still here, there's no way Bruce Boudreau would come back. That relationship is too strained. There's no way that would happen. So it would take Bob Murray getting let go for Bruce Boudreau to come back. But you have Gerard Gallant available. You have Claude Julien available. You obviously, like I said, have Bruce Boudreau available.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't think that the Ducks could afford any of those coaches because those are coaches that are 3 million plus.
Depends. I mean, it depends. Who knows where Bruce is at this point
And
in time.
also,
But yeah.
Do you think Claude Julien and Gerard Gallant want to come coach a team that's probably not going to be very good again next year?
It depends. It depends on what they want. Depends on what they want to do. Depends on where they're at. If they want to just jump right back in.
I think with Julien, you can safely say that he wouldn't want that
Julien
opportunity.
probably would not. Gallant
and
might.
I think Gallant's going to Seattle.
I think he's going to New York.
So either a big market that's going to pay them,
yeah,
or an interesting opportunity. But I just don't think the Ducks are in that ballpark. I mean, Dallas Eakins is on the lower end of salaries. I think he's at 1.5 million in the NHL coaching range, and so the Ducks are kind of in that budget area, and so that's why I don't think that those big fish that are out there are really realistic for the Ducks.
Totally and completely fair.
But I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong though. Like, I mean, in theory, those guys.
In theory, this is a good offseason to have a coaching vacancy.
But
because
I
of how
also
many guys.
think, but pragmatically, I just don't know if those guys are really available to the Ducks.
That's a fair point. That's definitely a fair point. So I think getting into kind of the next comment, because the Ducks on their website have essentially a transcript of the conversation. And so that's what I'm kind of going off of here. I watched what they did put on Twitter. You actually have been able to watch the entire media availability. But the next big thing was on Jeff Solomon and him being hired as VP of Hockey Operations. And here is the quote, I think that kind of is very important. Supposedly it's came about pretty quickly once David McNabb had announced that he was going to retire, or let them know that he was going to retire. Bob Murray had heard that Jeff Solomon was going to be moving on from LA and jumped kind of right in. But here's the quote. Jeff brings the analytic component to our organization that really needs to be upgraded and moved forward. I just haven't pushed hard enough to move it forward, but this was a good time for us to do that, and we got lucky. We got a break, finally. I've seen the success the LA Kings have had on and off the ice, and I've seen their signings. They have we all have a few funky contracts, but their contracts are very good. That's number one, and I've dealt with Jeff for years, and there's just a whole bunch of mutual respect there.
And that is key, because if that is part of the selling point, part of the reason that Jeff Solomon was sought out and wanted to go to Anaheim to establish potentially, we don't know what the depth of it will be yet, but potentially an analytics department, and not just, like an intern or a scout also doing charts on the side. That's huge for the Ducks, because they were one of the kind of last franchises in the league that didn't have really a dedicated staff to looking at analytics. And so if that's part of what Solomon is bringing, and also that Bob Murray sounds like he's on board with it, I think that this is unquestionably this is a positive development for the franchise.
I think it's definitely that. I think this can be twofold. I think it can be a very positive thing for the Ducks moving forward. And also, I want to bring this up. I don't know if I've said this on this podcast or as the Patreon. I'm not sure. But Rob Volman, who's written StatShot, did Hockey Prospectus, he went to the LA Kings mainly because of Jeff Solomon, and basically had this quote basically saying, I know his commitment to this field. By this field, he means the analytics. It's not just an infatuation or a fad to him or to the organization when talking about the Kings. So this is not Jeff Solomon just kind of lip service. This is kind of what he was in charge of, it didn't really believe in type of deal. This is something he believes in and he's going to be bringing with him. This is not maybe the what we were maybe sold by Dallas Eakins when we thought he was more so an analytics-friendly coach, but maybe some other things that we've seen don't really lend itself to that. It seems like Solomon is definitely in the boat of this is important, this is where the league's going, we need this department. And so I think no matter what, this is a good thing moving forward. Here's my concern slightly, and I do just want to mention this, is that Bob Murray is the person that held this back, that didn't push this forward, that didn't do any of that.
Is that a surprise, though?
No, it's not. But kind of, I'm going somewhere with this, is that he's still at the head of all this. He's still going to be this season, at least, above Jeff Solomon. And if he's the guy above him, he's the decision maker. So is he actually going to listen to Solomon on this?
Well, okay, so I think that's a fair point. It's totally fair.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it would be hard to believe that Jeff Solomon would come here
Agreed.
if he didn't think that he would have a voice, that he
That's
wouldn't
fair.
have a chance to be listened to.
That's fair.
Because the thing is, again, this is an assistant general manager that has that cachet that's actually going to be the one pushing for this. Having an analytics staff in your organization, that's I think where a lot of the times it gets lost. But because he's also viewed as a guy who's been in the game for a long time, who has that ability to communicate the numbers, who has an ability to communicate that information, that's maybe even more than half the battle within these organizations, is not only to believe in the information, but to be able to communicate it to the decision makers. And so I think for Solomon, I'm more optimistic than you, or I think that he will maybe not, I don't think he's going to be holding the controller, but I think he'll have a decent amount of input.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the quote because it actually wasn't in there. But there was a quote where basically Bob Murray kind of said something that it was something along the lines of essentially being able to understand the information. That's Jeff's gonna be Solomon's biggest thing with analytics is putting together a staff that can essentially help portray the information.
Yeah, I don't think it was in this interview. I think it was with someone else. But
yes.
Anyway, so the point there is that, and I also just want to say this. This is kind of where I was going with this. You have the quote?
I will find it one sec. I remember where it was.
Okay. Well, I just want to take a quick victory lap because for everybody that has told me, told you, anyone that we know over the last few years, as long as I've been talking about the Ducks, that analytics don't matter, that the decision makers don't look at that stuff, that this is just like a niche field, to see the Ducks go out and seek someone who that is part of their background and value his opinion, that's a pretty high level of validation for believing in this process, for believing in using data to make decisions.
So here's the quote.
Would you agree with that, by the way?
Yeah, so here's the quote. And this is actually something that I want to bring up before we kind of get back to Murray's quotes. I remembered where it was from. It was in 31 Thoughts, the blog from this past week. So here's the full blurb from Elliot Friedman. Murray said Sunday it's not that this. So this was after that interview. Murray said Sunday it's not that he doesn't believe in analytics, but the organization had challenges finding a way to process the data. Jeff will help us take the next step in that. What he explained caught my attention. We're going to spend on infrastructure to do what we need to do. Asked to expand on that, Murray came up with some interesting examples. The Seattle expansion draft looms, and Murray talked about what happened with Vegas. Where the Ducks lost Shea Theodore, he was careful with details, but admitted there are things they learned in the aftermath of the process that had to be changed. He also mentioned scouting and the world of strength training, and athletic therapy. When we heard Solomon was available, we moved fast. So a lot to unpack there, but I think that this is a very interesting quote that I want to unpack slightly with you here. So the first part of it is somewhat concerning, actually, very concerning, in the sense of it's good moving forward that they now understand that they need to have someone who can put together the data and the infrastructure to be able to do this. It's concerning that they had never realized this before, and that it kind of shows a little bit of a lack of wanting to learn.
It explains. Look, for me, I just am totally unsurprised by all this. I'm
unsurprised for sure.
So for me, it's hard for me to look at it that way because that's already what I thought was going on.
Fair.
And all of this to say, though, that when you look at how the franchise has trended the last 3 to 4 years, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
When you hear quotes like that.
I mean, finding a way to process this data. Just look at the stuff you and I look at all the time. Look at the player cards. Look at that type of stuff. These aren't that hard.
Yeah, but the thing is, here's the issue with saying that, is that you're telling that to someone like us who, we don't have decades of looking at the game a certain way. We didn't play in the NHL. We don't have this ego about it, right? We don't have that way of looking at it. And so telling someone like Bob Murray to look at it that way is a lot harder. It's a lot harder to get someone like that to buy in, because you're essentially telling them that everything that you know, or it's one way that they may take it is everything that you know, all this experience that you have, actually having played the game, been around the game, is maybe not quite as valuable. It's not the silver bullet when it comes to evaluation that you thought it was. And that's why it's so critical of how you communicate it, because you don't
That's a
want to
completely
step
fair
on
point.
toes. You don't want to make someone feel like, hey, guess what? It actually doesn't matter what you did. You want to walk that fine line, and I think that that's what Solomon. It sounds
That's
like
a
his
fair point.
value is
That
to the
is a very
organization.
fair point. On the second point, though, the Seattle expansion draft looms, and Murray talked about what happened with Vegas. What do you think this is about? So I took this either two ways. I took this either, as Kevin BX on his podcast had pointed out, Bob Murray had initially come to him about waiving his no move clause, and BX had countered saying, "I'll do it if you give me an extension."
Mm-hmm.
And then Murray later basically came back to him and said, "We actually don't need to do this. We found a way around it. So sure, you're good to go. We're protecting you."
Mm-hmm.
And the workaround was this. So do you think that it was either their kind of understanding of the expansion draft rules, or do you think it was their player development / maybe even aging curves understanding that came into play here?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to take away.
It's a lot of speculation on our part with that.
It's hard. Well, it's
Mine,
it's hard to take away anything specific from that. My takeaway from that was just more like we screwed up. I
yes.
think that's what it sounds like, is a very, very soft admission of, hey, we probably didn't do this all that well.
Yeah, and I mean, interesting on the mention of scouting, seeing as the Ducks are notoriously like lauded for their amateur scouting, and he said that their scouting has to get better. Interesting note there.
Well, I think if you look at their record over the last 5 years or so,
Mm-hmm.
there's some misses. It's look, I
Yep.
mean, that's what you expect. It's not gonna be all hits, but maybe their success rate has gone down a little bit. But getting back to the press conference though,
Yep.
I think outside of the Solomon thing, which was I think the big revelation, outside of that, I got to say a lot of this was kind of, we've heard this before,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where it's the young, the veterans. This time he switched it up. He called them the middle-aged players. The middle-aged players have to get better. They have to get on board with what we're doing here. The rebuild. The word rebuild was used, by the way. So it was a lot of the same stuff.
Reluctantly, but yes.
I think that there is some. I think that one thing that he kind of pointed to quite a bit was that it has become clearer which younger players are going to be potentially top six forwards, going into the next couple of seasons. I think that that's become clear to him. There was some praise for Max Comtois, praise for Isaac Lundestrom,
Praise for Max Jones.
none for Troy Terry. But I think that the
Can
subtext there
can I
is that,
can I
uh-huh.
can I back up real quick on that? He praised Max Jones and Max Comtois for drawing penalties, the two guys that draw the most penalties for us. This is an easily measurable thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Max Jones did draw the most penalties for the Ducks on a per 60 level basis and on a total basis. But the second most player is Troy Terry. Max Comtois is a little bit further behind. So I just find it interesting that he's putting together this narrative and saying they draw them as penalties because they go to the tough areas on the ice, when you can easily look at it and say, actually, wait, Comtois did not draw as many penalties as Terry. So
Yeah.
just funny there.
Well. So I think, yeah. I mean, it was interesting that Terry didn't get named, but I think that just kind of reading between the lines, it's pretty clear that he was one of the guys that they were talking about. One thing that was kind of cryptic, though, in regards to what he will do this summer, is he did mention how he's very anxious, very curious to see what happens right around the expansion draft, that short time frame between the expansion draft and the draft. And he talked about that there's a number of teams that are so close to the cap and that it's unbelievable. So it's tying some people's hands, but it also makes opportunities for other teams if they have space. And in theory, the Ducks could be one of those teams that have cap space. And I'm just curious if all this anxiety that Murray has for that time period, is he looking to wheel and deal? Is there potentially something that he's trying to get done during
And
that time frame?
and that's something he mentioned, is he's looking for scoring.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that.
he repeated that over and over.
Yeah.
that they need scoring and that they need to improve the power play. And so it's funny because this is something I think I may have told you on the watch along, or I don't know when. One thing I found about this press conference is I feel like Murray is good at identifying what is wrong with the team. Like if he were to sit down with us, or if you were to be on this podcast, I think he would agree with almost everything that's wrong with the team. except maybe like who's behind the bench or Derek Grant, things like that. But it's just the solutions to those
Yeah.
problems are where we start to diverge, because it sounds like, maybe he wants to go and make a trade for a top six forward. Like he talked about that they need to get help up front,
Well,
that's something that needs to happen.
and when he was asked like about he doesn't understand why the guys have suddenly fallen off, why the guys are
Mm-hmm.
not scoring anymore, why the Jacob Silverbergs are. And I mean, it's pretty obvious why they haven't. I mean, that isn't obviously an issue for this team, but the reason why they have fallen off is aging curves. When
Mm-hmm.
the guys get to over 30, there can be a decline, and it can be pretty steep also for these guys,
But
especially when
here's
injuries come into play.
what's funny though. Here's what's funny about that is that he was asked, why has the team struggled to score, and he said that we've gotten older, and maybe I
Mm-hmm.
waited too long to start this rebuild. We got older.
And
Guys are less willing to go to those places. So that's the funny thing,
well,
is that I think he does understand it somewhat, but also doesn't.
he's also putting things on the middle-aged guys when, I mean, here's the issue. I mean, let's get to the real crux of all this. The Ducks haven't actually tried to rebuild the team. They haven't. I'm not gonna like buy any argument that they have tried to rebuild this roster. The
Mhm.
guys they've moved out have been on the peripheral that they've moved out. None of them have been the core members of this roster, core members of
Right,
the
because
team.
that's what rebuilding really
Yeah,
entails, is that there has to be a significant change.
yeah. I mean, if you want to say buying out Corey Perry, fine, whatever. But Corey Perry was well over 30. You haven't bought out, and you haven't moved. You haven't
And
done
he was
anything.
coming off one of his worst seasons.
Yeah, you
So,
you haven't actually moved out a guy with high value that's in his core and his prime age to get assets to help you rebuild the franchise with an eye towards the future. That at the end of the
mhm.
day is what a rebuild is. And so Bob Murray utilizing the word rebuild doesn't mean anything to me, honestly, until he actually does something to back that up.
Mhm.
Just being completely honest here, like this has nothing to do honestly with the comments he said. It's just one thing when I look at these quotes, it's almost like talking out of both sides of your mouth. He's talking as if he understands certain things, but then doesn't when he says our middle-aged guys need to be better. I don't know what's happened with Raquel. He's getting his scoring chances, all the different stuff, and basically we need to help him out instead of actually understanding what this roster needs. Like he has I think at the end of the day, a big issue here is just having too much of his own skin in the game with these players, that he
Mhm.
feels like he needs to have them on this roster, that he's loyal to these players, and in reality, he needs to try to rebuild the team, rebuild the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think that even though he's using that word now, it's still, the actions don't really match, and maybe this summer will bring that. And so I don't know if I have another specific comment I really want to hit. Um, I have more of like a big picture takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, here's the quote on Rickard Raquel. I just want to bring this up. Ricky has had
Mm-hmm.
two. I don't have quite the answers as to why some of our production has gone down. Ricky has had 2 years in a row where he's just not scoring, and he does get scoring chances. We've got to get them back on the right page with the coaching staff. We have to come up with a few new ideas on how to do this, how to get to tough areas to score goals. And I think that is somewhat concerning when looking at like an analysis perspective. Yes, that is an issue for this team, but I think that the issue there is not understanding what Raquel is
Mm-hmm.
and trying and not understanding what made Raquel successful. What made Raquel successful wasn't necessarily going to the dirty areas. It was the fact that he was playing with Ryan Getzlaf.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're missing some things when kind of you're doing that with your analysis and what he was doing there. So I think that the other thing I want to kind of bring up is kind of there were some comments that were very clearly that he didn't understand aging curves. And so
Well, here's
I really hope, just let me finish this and then kind of jump in with whatever you want. I hope Jeff Solomon, if he truly is, which I fully expect and I trust, like everything we've read, is a very analytic friendly, really understands the game on that aspect. I really hope that Solomon, now that he's really kind of within the organization, he's hired, he's part of it, he can sit down with Bob Murray and almost go over these quotes and kind of tell him, here's why. Here's what's going on. Here's what the numbers are saying. Here's where you're at. These guys are past their prime. They're going down. We need to be moving them out. We need to do all this different stuff. And I think that will be very, very important for this Ducks franchise.
Yeah, and there was some kind of interpretations from what he said that there will be a coaching change in terms of the assistant coaches. And
Yes.
so it sounds like Morrison and Wilford could potentially both be out. I think it seems like the assumption is that Mark Morrison is gone. And so there's your change, folks. After the worst season in franchise history, an
Yeah.
assistant coach is gone. Um, I don't know. I mean, my big takeaway is that I think Murray is slowly coming to terms with the actual state of his franchise about where things are going.
Yeah.
I think he's still clinging to a lot of problematic views about how this all works. It is important, though. The first step is to admit that you have a problem, and I think that they are doing that. And slowly, maybe I'm just an optimistic person, but I think slowly but surely this franchise is inching in the
Do
right
you
direction.
do you think this do you think any of this changes what their plan or modifies their plans or what you thought their plan would be in the offseason? Because I think that was our big topic last podcast we did was the Ducks
Well,
offseason plan.
what's kind of concerning to me is that I think McNabb is still in the picture because he talked about him, David, and Jeff need to sit down and talk about the contracts for the RFAs
Well,
and different things like that.
I think it's trying to essentially relay information on where their cap is.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if their plans substantially change, but look, once Solomon is in that room, is at the table, we will see. But I don't know. I think that if you're a Ducks fan and just with how brutal the last 3 years have been, I think it's okay to feel like very cautiously optimistic. I still expect next season to be very difficult. I mean, if the Ducks make this big leap in the standings next year, just right now, based on how the roster is constructed, I would be surprised. But I think that there are better days ahead, not in a not too distant future. Maybe you disagree with that.
No, I don't. But sorry, one thing that are you done kind of talk are you done with that? Because there is one thing, one other
Will
thing.
you shut up now? Will you
Yeah.
stop talking?
Well, no. Sorry, I just remembered one other thing. Seeing as we were talking about the draft earlier, to bring up because I thought it was just an interesting quote when he was talking about the draft, saying, "From when I've been out scouting and seeing that it is a top end, heavy defense draft. There are a couple of good young forwards in there. We're going to take, as we always have, the best player available. We'll make our list, and we won't make our list by position, but the best player available. Then as it goes down the road, as you get deep, defensemen are always more valuable to move. Everybody needs defensemen, so we'll take the best player." Do you take anything from that?
Zero.
Yeah, I don't either. The only thing that was weird is that him saying defensemen are always valuable to move, and it's just like the Ducks haven't moved. I mean, I guess they moved Montour if you want to look at that, and they got a decent return.
The one funny quote to me was when he said to the reporters, "We have some good young defense prospects that you guys haven't even heard about." And it's like, well,
are you talking about Henry Thrun? Or are you talking about Jackson Lacombe?
Is this about Thrun, Lacombe, Moore? It's like, we follow. We follow the team.
Yeah.
We know who's being drafted.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, maybe some of the media members in that conference didn't know.
Maybe. But yeah, I mean, Jackson Lacombe, to his credit, made the All-Star team for I think it was Big Ten. Is that the conference that Michigan?
What's my surprise? My surprise from this podcast, Jake, is that you're not watching the USA Mexico soccer match that's going on.
I didn't even know it was happening, to be honest.
That's embarrassing for you.
I guess. I don't know.
As a professed soccer fan.
I am a soccer fan.
Well,
it is what it is. Oh, anyway. Ginger Wolf saying definitely high prospect for the Ducks on defense, Cody Curran.
Well, I mean, if the Ducks go D in this draft, I will be very curious to see who will it be. Because there's a bunch of guys that they could take.
Will it be Hughes? Will it be Edvinson?
Will it be Clark?
I hope it's Clark if it's going to be a defenseman. I mean, does Power fall?
If Power falls, that's the thing. If Power is available at 3,
I think it's a very defensible pick. It's a very defensible. Good pick.
I have said, kind of stay away from Owen Power, but that was more under the thought of if the Ducks get 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. I think at 3, if like Beniers, if Clark, if some of those guys are off the board, then yeah, getting another excellent defenseman in your stable isn't the worst thing in the world either. So
yeah, exactly. I think that.
I mean, if Eklund was available and they take Power, would you be upset?
No.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't
like. I still think, for me personally, I would take Eklund over him, but I think that I understand why a team would take Power.
Yes, and also Power, I think we should make clear, has some offensive upside.
Yes.
He's not like a purely shut. I don't think he's the traditional stay-at-home. I
think he has more offensive upside than Hampus Lindholm does, and that's a player who's been compared to a little bit as of now. Yeah,
and I think just in general, younger players these days all are more offensive. Like then, I think guys are kind of a little more positionless than they used to be.
Yeah.
And so the skills are just more transferable.
Yep. So anything else you want to bring up or want to jump to some questions?
No, I've got nothing else. I do want to ask you though,
Mm-hmm.
did you pay for the Floyd Mayweather Logan Paul fight? That's
God,
the big question tonight.
God, no, no. And I still haven't actually seen what happened. All I know is
I, I
I've got text messages from friends saying that was a waste of time, and we
yeah,
will
so
never get the time back that was.
so I'm looking on Twitter here while you've been talking. Sorry, I'm outing myself here,
You are.
but yeah, apparently it was an awful fight. Floyd Mayweather won.
Did he knock him
No,
out?
no knockout.
Wait, but there were no judges.
Exactly. Well, people are saying he won, like that they went the distance,
Oh,
but there were no judges, so no official victory.
yeah, that's dumb.
Jake Paul just tweeted in all caps, "My brother just beat Floyd Mayweather."
Of
So
course. M. Young saying it was
I,
a hugging match.
I really want to apologize to everyone that's listening that didn't want to hear about this, but it is kind of fun to talk about because of just how much of a joke it is,
Yeah.
how ridiculous it is. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into some questions. So for those of you watching on YouTube, yes, we do put this video on YouTube. The Twitch stream goes up there, youtube.com/crashspawn, or watching on your favorite podcasts or listening on your favorite podcast services, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Apple Podcasts, whether it's any of the other ones. We do a live stream of the show each and every time at twitch.tv/crashthepond. And at Twitch, you can help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month where you can help support this show, and it does help out significantly. You get special badges next to your name, special emotes in the chat, and it really does help support the show. And you can be just like ODog81, who resubbed at Tier 1 for 3 months in a row, saying that he was a child when the Ducks won the Cup. Kempafu resubbed for 23 months, and he said Wallstedt is gonna be great in a Duck sweater. Dan Grinshaw said resubbed for 10 months, and Fat Geralt resubbed for 6 months in a row.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you. So let's jump into some questions. It's been a while because you didn't go to a Ducks game at Honda Center this year, right?
I did not.
Okay, neither did I. But that guy Bobski asked, best food option in Honda Center.
Ooh. That is a tough one. I don't think well, because usually I'm going to be honest, I'm outing myself here again. This is a Revelations podcast. Most of the money I spend at Honda Center is on alcohol. So usually in the budget there, in my salary cap, there's not a lot of room left over for food there.
Yeah, and here's my thing on it.
Are you a nachos guy at sporting events?
I am at baseball games.
I feel like they're too much trouble.
The helmet nachos are the way to go at Angel Stadium.
Okay.
The helmet nachos, the thing is, it can't just be like chips with cheese. Like, you got to do full on nachos if you're getting nachos. But I won't do it at hockey games. Honestly, like, if you're going to Honda Center, you're buying food there, you got to just understand that it's going to be extremely expensive, and that's just got to be out. Yes. Price is not part of the conversation.
I've spent over $100 at a Ducks game before. Not afraid to admit it.
Yeah.
And I think it was all beer, by the way.
They have like fries that are pretty damn good. That are like, they do one with gravy and crispy chicken, and some bacon bits. Those are pretty good.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
The pizza's solid, honestly. Also, like, don't sleep on that.
Nice and microwaved, yummy.
Yeah. They have a brick oven pizza place. Yeah.
No, I don't. believe that.
In the Sierra Nevada area, you can see the oven.
Oh, okay. I think. Again, my memory from a lot of Ducks games is kind of hazy. Yeah. So forgive me.
Yeah. Ginger Wolf asks, question. Felix, do you like Corey Perry even more now that he's single-handedly leading your team to the Stanley Cup?
Perry is still good.
There it is, folks. Hashtag Perry is still good. It's still going. It's still alive. It's back. It's back, baby. I may actually buy a Corey Perry Montreal jersey if they they make the Cup final.
I hope you do. He's been awesome. He's just so much fun to watch, and you can just. I know that we don't do intangibles in this show, but you can just tell how much he cares, how much it means to him to still be playing meaningful hockey at this stage of his career, especially because he's been cast off from different places.
He was in the Cup final last year.
Yeah, and so I think it's just a cool story. It's a feel-good story, a really good player, and he's kind of developed some chemistry on that line with Eric Stahl and Yoel Armia. I don't know how much of a product that is of playing the Jets, But even against Toronto, he was playing well, and so I'm loving it. I'm loving life. Actually cheering for Corey Perry as a member of my own team.
That guy Bobsky, following up on his previous question, what food should they add to Honda Center?
Good question.
I
Maybe
have a very easy answer.
I think I know what you're gonna say, but go for it.
Gonna add an OC staple, TK burger.
Ooh, yeah, like a legit burger would be nice, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion because, like you can get a burger probably, but it's like
their bacon cheeseburger actually is pretty damn good. I should also say that.
I feel like Jake's had the whole menu at Honda Center.
I don't know.
Well, you've been going to games there for a long time,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that makes sense. The M&Ms are good. Good peanut M&Ms. They're always better in the box for some reason.
Okay, so give a food suggestion.
A food suggestion? I was going to say get some poutine in there.
They've had poutine at some point.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, get one caveat: get good poutine, not like not lip service poutine.
All right. Dalton Keys asks, "Who's the third best team in the Pacific next season?"
Ooh. Well, okay. I need to refresh my memory now. Who's going to be in the Pacific?
Vegas, Seattle, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, LA, San Jose, Anaheim.
That division's going to be bad.
It's gonna be Vegas, then Edmonton, then Calgary.
I think Edmonton will make some changes this offseason, and I could see them coming back and being the second best team.
And then third best is probably going to be Calgary, is my bet.
Seattle, number 2?
No. Seattle's going to be worst.
With Jesper Wallstedt in net?
Yeah. So, wait, who finishes third? That was the question.
So I don't know. This is a tough one.
That's why he asked the third question, not second. Second's
okay,
easy.
I'm gonna go bold here. You ready for my bold take?
San Jose?
I'm going to say LA gets Jack Eichel and finishes third.
Interesting. Young says, especially after his performance and leadership at the World, do you think there's a chance Seattle takes Henrique?
So Nick Alberga today tweeted that Seattle's going to enjoy Adam Henrique or something to that effect. And he's been right about everything Adam Henrique related for obvious reasons due to the connection there. I'm pretty sure that was joking, but who knows? A lot of truth is said in jest. And so maybe Seattle's approach to Anaheim when it comes to the expansion draft, or let's just take a player who will help us for the next few years, who helps us get to the cap floor and who will bring some leadership. So I'm going to say it. I could see it. I could see it because the thing is for Anaheim, there just aren't that many other options. So you can almost defend any option for Seattle.
Do you think he's saying that and the Ducks are going to trade something for them to take Henrique?
Ooh,
because I think that's what it would take for them to take Henrique. Ducks have to give him a third, fourth round pick.
Would you do that if you're the Ducks?
No.
I mean, getting off that contract would be nice.
It'd be nice, but like
a fourth round pick.
I'd rather hold on to my picks. The Ducks are a bad team. Stop trading picks.
I understand, but
they traded a fourth round pick for freaking Nick Delorier. Stop trading picks.
I understand, but cap space is valuable, and I don't see Adam Henrique's value.
I guess
I don't think. Like I think it's kind of like it's a get out of jail almost free card.
Fair.
Yeah, so I think it's defensible.
It's defensible. I don't think I would do it, but sure. Shadow Ops Gaming said, "Do you guys think Bob Murray will try to trade for Eichel, Pierre-Luc Dubois, or Laine?" Red Friedman's 31 thoughts that the Ducks will try even harder to get Dubois. I don't think Dubois is going anywhere. Basically, what was in 31 thoughts was that the Ducks made a very serious pitch for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
No Zegras or Drysdale.
Yeah, no Zegras or Drysdale. But he said, I do think they will try to take a big swing. They've got flexibility, and another team pointed out they could have open space on its protected list depending on what they want to do. Going to be an interesting summer.
Do you think they offered Comtois? Just random thought.
Probably.
For Dubois.
Probably. Do you think Comtois' value is higher now?
Yes. World Championship, he's got that little shine.
Oh, I didn't even mean that, but sure.
Well, and also the season he had. I think that, look, there's where there's smoke, there's potentially fire, and I think that they will have conversations. I don't know if it'll go anywhere. I don't know, because if you're not willing to trade Zegras or Drysdale, that does limit your market a little bit.
Ken Paffu with an interesting take, by the way, on the Henrique situation. I think it's okay to trade a fourth for them to take on Henrique and then take on a bad contract as a result of that for a year and get a first as a result.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, cap space is valuable, and that is a good point.
If you use it. And
Jake
And
is just so pessimistic still.
100%. I fully admit it.
That colors everything you say, which is fine. I mean, it's not unwarranted
Yeah,
about with how bad they've been.
there's a reason. Here's the thing.
Yes.
I used to be optimistic. Used to.
I was happy once.
Once, way back when. And then Bob Murray beat it all out of me.
Yeah.
All right. So Lewis X209 said Sprite or 7-Up?
Never had 7-Up. Or maybe I have. I think they're kind of the same.
I'd
I
probably
don't
go
have a
Sprite.
take there.
I'd probably go Sprite. I don't really know the difference that much. I'm not a big fan of that type of soda though. That's not something I go out of my way to drink.
What's your favorite soda?
Probably Coke or Dr. Pepper.
Interesting. When I did used to drink soda, and by the way, I'm not saying this to like shame people who do. I have my vices when I eat. Don't worry. Anyone who knows me knows that. But
I'm a Diet
when
Coke
I used
guy
to
now.
when I used to drink soda, I loved orange soda. Any orange soda, but specifically Crush. Very good. Very elite.
Keenan and Kel guy over there, I guess.
Never heard of that.
What?
Never heard of that. Don't know what that is.
The show Keenan and Kel?
Never heard of it.
Kel, who loves orange soda? Kel loves orange soda? You're leaving me out on that? Wow.
Nope. Get out of this topic.
Wow. Just leaving a Keenan and Kel reference out there. I am so mad right now.
Never heard of that show.
I should we just end the show right now? I'm tempted to with that. Wow. Fat Geralt says, how did Felix, as a Habs fan, join a Ducks podcast? Sorry if this has already been asked, but sometimes we get asked things that have been asked before in the off season.
Yeah, so basically, I used to write about the Habs for different websites, and then at one point there was a opening for a blogger position at the Hockey Writers for the Ducks. I jumped on it because I went to school down here, so I was like, well, I live around here anyway. It would be kind of fun to track the local team, and this was like 2014. And just went from there. Just stuck with it. Here I am talking to Jake. So
yeah, and it might be time that I kick you to the curb after that.
Dumb.
After the no
one knows what that is.
Everyone in our Twitch chat is saying, "What are you talking about?"
No one's ever heard of that.
Everyone in our Twitch chat is saying, "What?" Like, legitimately, Honey Badger said maybe new host time.
I don't know what this hype is
the
about.
The Cinnamon Toast Crunch slander. Not liking or not seeing Keenan and Kel. Did you not watch all that?
I think Cornbread is the one that I've gotten the worst reaction from you on.
Yeah, Cornbread.
This might be worse. Who knows?
No, this is way worse. Keenan and Kel was a fantastic show.
Now people are surprised that I'm a Habs fan. I feel like there's a good portion of people that think I'm a Ducks fan.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't be crazy to think because I follow them. There are periods where I follow the Ducks a lot more than the Habs just because I kind of have to. But no,
yeah.
I mean, there's only one team.
Yeah,
it's home team or no team.
The best is when people get into your mentions and say you're just a fanboy or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love that. It's easier to ignore when it's just like blatantly untrue.
Yeah. So yeah, Keenan and Kel was Keenan Thompson.
Have I seen Good Burger? Fat Gerald asking that. No, never heard of that.
Did you not watch?
Did I not have a
that?
childhood?
Did you not watch all that? Did you never watch Nickelodeon in the 90s?
You're just throwing out words right now.
You
These
didn't watch
words.
all that?
Don't know what that is. I haven't seen all of that.
You don't know what all that?
None of that. None of that. I've seen none of that.
Do I even continue talking to you? Lewis is asking. You weren't even raised in Canada because he's asking, do they not have Nickelodeon in Canada? You were raised in NorCal.
In 90s, I lived in Canada, so
when in the 90s?
Basically through almost the end of the 90s.
Well then, crap. That probably actually explains it because this was all on Nickelodeon. There was Clarissa Explains It All that. Keenan and Kel, Rugrats.
I watched some Nickelodeon like when I was a kid. I'm not crazy, but haven't seen these random shows that people are throwing at me.
I can't believe it.
I do want to say, because Shadowups Gaming 13 saying that the hit on Evans must make the Habs want to sweep the Jets. Yeah, that was a bad hit, dirty hit. People are saying it was clean are just totally wrong.
Here's the issue with that hit. Let me just say this. I actually buy the argument of it not being charging. because of
No,
it.
it's charging.
But hear me out here. Because of it being a back check, he does glide into it. You can maybe try to push
But the glide thing is not part of the rule.
It's the distance traveled, but he's not it's distance traveled to make a hit. And so the distance traveled there is to be in on the back check, not with the sole purpose of making the hit. The issue with this hit for me is the head contact. The main point of contact is the head, and that's what makes it a suspendable hit to me. And it doesn't matter that Evans' head is down, any of that argument, because the rulebook doesn't actually say anything about that. The only thing the rulebook says is if a guy changes his position prior to being hit that makes it so his head gets hit, then sure, the person being hit does have some of the responsibility. But if you watch Evans' head is in the same position the entire time. And Scheifele goes high, catches a lot of head. It's not through the chest. It's not primarily through the chest. That is what, to me, makes it a dirty hit. It's not necessarily the distance.
Didn't play the puck.
True. That too.
The Department of Public Safety or player safety video, they correctly pointed out he had
that's fair.
Part of his argument was he was trying to protect a goal or prevent a goal, and he never actually once
he could have stopped the goal.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that actually defeats what you were saying earlier.
Can I also that doesn't defeat what I'm, because I was just saying it's not a charge. But I want to just briefly say this on Department of Player Safety while we're on the topic. Might as well. We're in the last. We probably should wrap this up somewhat soon. But I think that they should be commended for how they've been handling the actual hockey plays. I think there is still the criticism, and it's a valid criticism, of any of their suspensions or non-suspensions of scrum-type plays, whether it's Ryan Reeves, whether it's Tom Wilson, whether it's any of that. But the actual hockey plays throughout this entire year, they've basically gotten spot on. And that, I think, goes to the fact of they've been instructed on what is a clean and what is not a clean play between the whistles, whereas a lot of the things after the whistles, it's kind of more so a gray area where the NHL hasn't really made that something that they want punished. And so I think that if we're going to be hard on George Peros and the department for all the after whistle stuff, we should also commend them for getting things right between the whistles.
Yeah, no, and I think that, yes, the 4 games was fair enough. I think he should have just been done for the series, but I am a little biased there. I think 4 games.
4 games is a lot in the playoffs.
Well, especially considering that he has no previous history.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't expecting him to get that high, to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be 2 or 3 just because of the no previous record. But 4 games is good, and my big takeaway, my big joy is that I don't think he'll get to play again this season.
I do not either.
I think that is the best revenge the Habs can have, is just that he doesn't get to get back in and try to make a difference.
Emyan has an interesting question. If the Habs win tomorrow, does the suspension really does it carry over? If the Habs
I don't know.
I think it does. I think if you're suspended in the playoffs, it does carry over. So I think you would have a 1-game suspension.
That's even funnier then. That's even better. He has to deal with this next season.
Yeah, but it doesn't go in like if you go with the math of a 1 playoff game is equal to 2 regular season games.
No, they're not going to change the math.
It's not going to be 2 regular season games. It's just going to be 1 additional game.
That's so funny. That's even better then.
Yeah.
That he's going to have to pay for this until next year.
Yeah.
So, assuming that. And also, why are the Canadians playing back-to-back? Why are they playing on Monday night? Don't understand that.
Oh, it makes total sense. It's because every other series started a week, like 3 or 4 days earlier.
Well, so sure, from that perspective, but just from the perspective of having the best product out there of like player, safety.
Do you know why? Why is that they are trying to get done before the Olympics starts.
I get it.
Yeah.
So here's
that guy Bobsky. No, preseason does not count for the suspension. It would be a regular season game.
Here's a fun hypothetical for you, which now we're completely off the rails / potentially turning into a Habs pod. If you were the Canadians, would you start Jake Allen in net tomorrow?
I have no idea. You're asking me the complete wrong questions here. No, I would not, though.
Really? Well, what do you mean you have no idea? I'm sure you have an opinion on this.
I have. Well, my opinion typically is play the backup. But I think when you're in a playoff series, you have a hot goalie, you have a guy playing well, and it's a closeout game. Play Carey Price.
You know how bad the Jets are. You know how much you could benefit.
So are you looking from
you're
looking at it from a rest perspective?
Yes, I'm looking at it from. So if you can scratch out that win with Allen, then and because Allen's been good this year, maybe then Carey Price gets that additional rest.
I think you want to just end it, and then you can get the rest because it's a sweep.
Yeah, I mean that's because I had the thought of do they play Allen tomorrow, and I came down basically with what you said is just that no, you just want to end the series, just get him out of there, and then he'll get the rest.
Yep.
So
exactly. Does Hellebuck play tomorrow? Yes.
I mean,
he has to. There's no way.
What are the Jets going to do? Are they just going to fire everybody?
No, the Jets think they're fine. The Jets beat the Oilers.
They look so bad.
Because they look so bad because they are bad.
Here's the insane thing. Everybody at ESPN picked the Jets to win the series.
Yeah,
except
because
for,
people are dumb in mainstream
Uchiros.
media.
But come on.
People are mainstream media is like people buy into the narratives. People look at the fact that they swept the Oilers and the Oilers had McDavid. The fact that they were able to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, and the Habs don't have anyone of that caliber.
Shut down.
Yeah, the Habs don't have anyone of that caliber. There's all those narratives that you can look into, when in reality you look in, they won a couple very close games that ended up going to overtime. They weren't that great in those games, but the Oilers aren't that great of a team anyways. They're fine. They're better than the Jets, but it's a small sample size. That's my thing with the playoffs, and my overall thought process over the last couple of years where I've come to is that the overreaction to the playoffs on either end is just insane to me.
But it's fun.
There's definitely fun, but I think it's way too much. It's way too much.
Here's a fun
teams.
question for you. Now we're just totally off the rails again. It's fine. What do you do if you're Colorado and you lose to Vegas?
You run it back. Let's say you run it back with the same team, assuming that you're in a softer division next season.
Yeah, but let's say you lose, they just lose out this series. They don't win another game. Because that's kind of where this is trending right now.
You run it back with the same team.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You look at this isn't rocket science. Run it back with the same team.
The West Division caveat though is getting stronger.
Chris Kindred with an interesting comment. The Jets have an insane amount of talent. I don't understand how they are this bad. Let me jump in here. They have a lot of forward talent, which is why they're good on the power play. The issue is that all those guys are very high scoring talent type of players. They're not necessarily play drivers, and then their defense is just bad.
Well,
it's very bad.
It's not that they're bad. It's that they're all playing way out of position. They're all playing a spot or two too high. And so you have like three pairings that are either second or third pairings, and it's not good enough in the playoffs. And also, I don't think that Paul Maurice coaches a good system. It's pretty clear. It can't purely because of the roster talent.
Yeah,
right?
I think a big issue for this roster is that their defense is just poor. And I think that and by poor, it's exactly what you said. And also,
I don't think that their forward depth is great either.
I mean, they have the high-end talent.
They do.
And I think that's kind of more so where Chris Kindred was going with it, that they have an insane amount of talent. They have Pierre Luc.
Do the Jets circle back to Manson this offseason? Does this push them to that?
Maybe it does. They need that physical player to stop the Habs, to stop Corey Perry.
They're getting bullied right now by Corey Perry.
They are.
So.
That first goal was just hilarious.
Well, so the thing is, if you're the Ducks with Manson, I mean, what do you even want from the Jets? Because you're not getting any of the good stuff.
Do you circle back and try to do Manson and Raquel for Perfetti?
I mean, that would be great if they could get Perfetti. I think that's too much though for Perfetti.
As in what?
I think it's an overpay.
Yeah, Perfetti and a pick.
Yeah, I think I'd rather go that route.
Perfetti and the first for Manson.
I don't think you want to deal Raquel and Manson in the same deal.
If it can get you a higher end talent, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Perfetti is that. I don't know. It's still a bit of a dice roll though as a prospect.
All right, let's end with this question. We'll close this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
Non-biased from you. He didn't ask this, but I'm adding that to this.
Oh, come on.
Who's your pick to win the cup?
Well, okay, so my bracket says that I picked the Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup. And I am sticking to that. I will say, I mean, just like any person who's watched the last couple of games of that series, I don't feel as good about it right now. I do have the Lightning in the final. They are currently up 3-1, steamrolling the Carolina Hurricanes. And so my confidence in them to maybe beat the Avalanche is going up. So yeah, I guess the short answer is Avalanche.
I
But
have the Avalanche still, but I think that the close second for me now is exactly what you said. I think after watching that
oh, you've
Tampa,
converted.
after that Tampa Carolina game, oh boy, Tampa looks good.
They look great, and the thing is, they're beating a good team.
Well,
Now they're
here's the thing. Here's the thing with
Mhm.
Tampa that I think is so key. They have stretches where they get outplayed, and
Yeah,
then they just come back and bully the team and just put in 4 or 5 goals.
yeah, and they make it look like it's so. It must be so. What's the word I'm looking for? It must,
Demoralizing.
yeah, exactly, demoralizing. It must be so demoralizing if you're like the Hurricanes, because the Hurricanes were playing very well for stretches, and then Kucherov comes down. Now you maintain that Mrazek let in a couple
He
softies,
did.
yeah, which is fair enough. But yeah, so I think the Lightning could be that team if it's not the Avs. I mean, maybe it'll be Vegas if Vegas gets through
If Vegas does
Colorado.
make it through and it's Vegas, Montreal, I might just buy a Corey Perry Montreal jersey right then and there and just be a
I will
fanboy.
I will say this, and this might sound like an insane take, but I don't like. I think the Habs have a much better chance against Vegas than Colorado. I think
Yes.
Colorado's style would really give them fits because they're just like a on steroids version of Toronto. But Vegas is much more of a kind of grinded out team, which is sort of how the Canadians want to play. And so I would be. I'm not saying I would pick the Habs to beat Vegas, but I just might. Who knows? So my bias pick, by the way, is Canadians to win the cup, of course. Also, Salem the Black Cat is making an appearance on the
Yes.
pod here.
Yes. As we're about to close this out. So, with that being said, let's wrap this thing up.
Yeah, well, hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for bearing with us here the last couple of weeks as we took a little bit of a break, as you know, Jake imposed a break upon us. It's okay. We got to let him get his rest.
Just blaming me. Just blaming me.
Well, you were the one who went off to Vegas, so
Yeah, we still did a podcast that weekend.
did we? It's all
Yes.
blending together.
We did it on Monday.
No, we didn't. Okay. Well, anyway, if you've been enjoying our podcast, there are a few different ways to support us. The number one way is our Patreon page. That's at patreon.com/crash the pond. There are 3 tiers of support, and all of them have their benefits. So for $1 a month, $1 a month, that's to me a small pledge, but it does still go a long way. You get a lot of benefit from it. You get to join our patrons only Discord chat, which is a lot of fun. You get to connect with other Ducks fans, other diehard fans. There's a general chat where we'll just talk about anything, shoot the breeze. There's a hockey channel there, and you know we'll go in there during Ducks games during the season, and during the off season we'll also talk playoffs, talk latest signings, draft, or things like that. So it's a lot of fun. Honestly, for $1 a month, it actually goes a long way. Now, for $5 a month, you get access to 2 bonus episodes, and that is where we will talk about maybe more league-wide topics. We'll also go more in depth if there's a specific Ducks topic that's really kind of gnawing at us. And at $5, you also get access to the Discord, where there is a channel where you can make patron suggestions for topics, which we will discuss on the show. So, for example, tomorrow night, Jake and I are going to be doing a podcast. Is it tomorrow, Monday night, or Tuesday night?
We're planning for Monday night.
Monday night could turn into Tuesday. We'll see, depending on the Habs. But our next show, we're going to be ranking the best players in the NHL. And so this is going to be a fun one because I feel like we might have diverging opinions. Who knows? So we do rankings that those types of episodes. That's for $5 a month. Now for $15 a month, you get access to everything I just talked about. You also get access to 2 watch-alongs a month, which during the Ducks season is where we do basically a broadcast of the Ducks games. We give you live commentary during the game, give you an alternative to what you've become accustomed to with the Ducks, and maybe some more stats, some more tactics, just some more nitty gritty stuff, and also some good banter as well. During the off season, for right now, we're doing playoff games. So this weekend we did Lightning Hurricanes. That was a lot of fun. That one was a lot more laid back, a lot more chirping.
It was a
I would
watch
say.
party. Watch party's the better way to do it than watch along for that one because we're just kind of shooting the breeze.
Yes, and as the off season wears along, we'll probably do some old Ducks games on there. We'll revisit some games from the past. So that's for $15 a month. You can get access to all of that at patreon.com/crash the pond. Now, there's still a couple of other ways to support us. You can leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts.
And I want to briefly mention before you read our new review, we are currently at 198 ratings. So we're two away
Yeah.
from breaking 200. So for anyone out there that's enjoying the show, has been wanting to support us, help us break that 200 mark.
Yes. So we did get a new review, and is it the one from May 26th you're talking about, referring to?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a 5-star review from, I'm not sure how to pronounce this,
I
Deshuzens.
so I think from having read
Deshuzens.
it and the fact that he gave us a hint, I think, and my hunch is this is Christian Charbonneau from our Discord chat.
Okay. Well, so this is a really fun one. I'll try to read it as best I can. Title is Big Boomin' Podcast, which is a nice ode to the one and only Cody Curran, who we still haven't seen in a duck sweater. Uh, this podcast is great. Jake and Felix have big boomin' hot takes that hit as hard as Andy Walensky's one-timer. Yes, so many references just layered into that first line.
There's a lot as we
I
keep
love
going.
that. The sound quality is as smooth as the 25th anniversary jersey, which is a great jab at Jake, who hates that jersey, who absolutely detests it. If you're into face-offs and some Bob Murray love, this is the podcast for you, which of course is totally true. Jake is the Derek Grant, Felix is Sam Steele. Over here at CTP, we don't encourage small skilled players. We like to win face-offs and grind games out with big kids. All jokes aside, oh, those were jokes. Come on. All jokes aside, great podcast for all things Ducks related. Keep up the good work, guys. Also, if you don't know who I am just yet, I'll give you a hint. And this is where, like you said, hashtag Fabian Lascelles to Anaheim. So there you go. I'm surprised.
We didn't even mention Lascelles in the third.
Well, that's the problem with this draft is there are so many names that you can bring up. Maybe we'll do a big draft show. But anyway, thank you so much, Christian, for that review. That was awesome.
If it was you, I hope it is.
If it was you, let's just say it was you. And if it wasn't, well, I'll hold the L.
Let us know.
But thank you so much for that. That honestly, it's just a lot of fun. And so if you want to leave us a review, like you can see here, we appreciate it. The more jokes you can layer in, the more references, we'll get a good kick out of it here on the show.
Yep.
Now, if you don't have Apple Podcasts, that's totally fine. You can follow us. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, and you can also subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond. You can leave some comments there. Jake is active in the comments, and there's a nice little community there. What else is there, Jake, that how people can support us?
They can find the kind of outside of that, just interact with us on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. You can find Felix at Felix_Sicard. You can find the website at Crash Pond. You can also support us by going and reading us at Crash Pond when articles go up. CrashPond.com. You can also find we have shirts, we have sweatshirts.
Yeah, crashthepond.com/shop. That is it. Go check that out. I'm wearing the t-shirt right now. If you're on the stream here.
Yeah, your microphone.
There you go. Sorry. That was pretty bad. I need to find a way. But yeah, hoodies. There's a little June gloom going on. It's over here in SoCal right now. A little June gloom. It's chilly in the morning. So if you're going to walk the dog, rock a nice Crash the Pond hoodie. So that is going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for following along as we approach the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. Have a great week. Have a great Monday if you're listening on Monday, and we will talk to you at the next show. Have a good one.
Bye.